Let us know what you think of it. We love to hear your feedback. And if you're here live and can't have your video on, please do so as well. So Ayelet is the manifestation mentor. She is an adventure-loving, green-living, healthy dessert fanatic and yogi. And she's an inspirational speaker, life coach, and therapist. She's trained in cognitive, behavioral, and narrative therapy and lived in India for a good number of years, where she learned visualization and meditation under some of the greatest enlightened masters until she moved to Israel about 4 years ago. And in Israel, she's been studying mysticism and spiritual living under mystics and rabbis. So she's led some transformational retreats and workshops for many, many women all around the world. It's really a treat to have her here today. And Ayelet, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Amazing, Jody. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time. I know most of us are moms and we have busy lives, so I really, really don't take for granted your time and energy with me tonight. So let's jump right in. Okay, so Passover. What is it that we're celebrating on Passover? Right? Most people you ask who don't necessarily have a deep understanding into what Pesach, Passover, means energetically, will tell you that on Passover, we're generally celebrating our leaving Egypt thousands of years ago. If that's the case, why do we have to keep celebrating today, year after year, something that happened thousands of years ago? And when I say celebrate, I mean, we all know there's a whole ordeal leading up to Pesach. We do spring cleaning is an understatement, as we all know, when it comes to Pesach prep. Some people I know spend weeks with their toothbrushes scrubbing in between each tile on their floors. So is that what it means to celebrate something that happened thousands of years ago? I mean, what's the connection? How is this relevant to our lives today? And that's what I want us to make clear this evening. So the answer to why tapping into the energy that Passover affords us each year is really profound once we understand it. And so my goal today is to leave you feeling excited and optimistic and eager and hopefully a little bit more relaxed to enter into this opportunity that awaits you, this opportunity called Pesach. Okay, so yes, while it's true, we were slaves in Egypt and we were freed thousands of years ago, but Egypt, which is called Mitzrayim in Hebrew, is not just about it being a physical location, I think like southern or southwest, right, of Israel. When God took us out of Mitzrayim, he extricated us from the place of constricted opportunities, from the place of tight control and narrow-mindedness, where our movement and our freedom was severely limited. So Mitzrayim also translates into the word limitation or constriction or narrowness. And when something is narrow, you're unable to see the full picture with clarity. So Mitzrayim comes from the word in Hebrew, meitzar, which means limit or constriction. So in other words, thousands of years ago, when we were in Mitzrayim, yes, we were physical slaves, but Mitzrayim, like I said, is not just about a physical location. It's a mindset. And today we each experience our own version of Mitzrayim, our own version of mental slavery. Every day, multiple times a day in our prayer book, we are told to remember Zecher leYetziat Mitzrayim. Remember leaving Egypt. Remember leaving Egypt. And we repeat this consistently throughout the day, every day, even when it's not Passover. Why such a huge emphasis on leaving Egypt? There's the historical event, but our sages teach us that it's so much deeper than that. They say, בכל דור ודור חייב אדם לראות את עצמו כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים. Every generation, a person has to see himself as though he's leaving Egypt. So when our sages teach that every generation must remember, that means us, that means you, that means me. It means that we need to currently and totally and fully embody freedom, emotional freedom, mental freedom. Now, today, each and every one of us has something that we're stuck in, like I said, our own version of limitation. In some way or another, we're all a slave to something. We're all still slaves in some way. For example, if you are addicted to sugar, then you're a slave to your addiction. If you're addicted to social media, you're a slave to your phone. I'm guilty of this sometimes. I catch myself scrolling aimlessly, right? If you're money hungry and convinced that you will not be happy until you have more and more and more, you're a slave to money. Or perhaps you're a slave to power or a slave to control. Or if you have a mental block or a limitation, such as, I'm not worthy of feeling emotional freedom. I'm not worthy of getting the love that I want. I'm not worthy of making X amount of money or of being a good mother. Or if you tell yourself, I just can't do anything right, then you're a slave to your limiting belief. Now, I don't mean to come across so strongly, but we're going to shift and we're going to leave feeling good. That's my promise for you tonight. But I just wanted to make this as clear as I possibly can. And we need to remember this, that we said Mitzrayim comes from Meitzal, which means limitation. So today we're going to discuss how to take whatever limitation you are currently facing in your own personal life, so that you can leave your own exile, so that you can leave your own slavery, so that you can truly enter into what it means to be emotionally free. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper, yeah? Another name for Pesach, right? We know there's Chag HaMatzot, but another name for Pesach is Chag HaCherut. Cherut means freedom. So another word for Passover is literally the holiday of freedom. We are celebrating our own freedom from mental slavery today. Truth is, you are living in one of two realities in any given moment. Either you're a slave or you are free, right? We're either, many of us might have heard this before, you're either experiencing fear or experiencing love. The two can't live together. Okay, similarly, you're either experiencing slavery or you're experiencing emotional control, freedom. So, okay, I'm just going to break this down bit by bit. We said Mitzrayim, which is Egypt in Hebrew, also means limitation, constriction, and narrowness. We said that it comes from the word meitzal, which means limitation. And what I find fascinating is, do you know what another word for neck is in Hebrew? Okay, I'm the one speaking, so I'll just tell you. It's metzal. The word metzal is inside the word Mitzrayim. So bear with me for a second, because we're going to go even deeper. We said metzal is neck, right? And we also said that it means narrowness. And if we think about it, what is the most narrow part of the human body? It's your neck. It's the most constricted, narrow part of the human body. And we know that when we energetically feel stuck, when we don't feel connected to someone, we usually feel constricted in our throat, right? And so what is it that your neck separates? It separates your head and your heart. In fact, Chassidut teaches us that the furthest distance between any 2 points in the world is between the head and the heart. Why is that? Because the head says, don't eat that third piece of chocolate cake, girlfriend. You just committed to losing 10 pounds, right? But what does the emotional, impulsive, animalistic heart tend to say? Go for it. You deserve it. Your kids drove you crazy today. You worked so hard. Give yourself a break. Start your diet tomorrow. But then tomorrow becomes the next day, which becomes the next day, which becomes the next day. And then what happens? The distance between, the space between the head and the heart gets even further apart. Ay. Are you guys getting this? Tell me if I'm going too fast. If I'm going at a good pace, nod your heads. Or if you want me to go slower, then tell me we're good? Good pace?
Also, you can put your comments in the chat if you have any feedback for Ayelet. Too fast, too slow. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. There's just so much to cover that I want to make sure I get to all of it. Okay, so so true freedom is when you have the power to act upon what you know to be true. You know intellectually that you want to start a business, let's say, but you feel in your heart that you aren't good enough, or you don't have enough credentials, you don't have enough plaques or degrees on your wall to start your dream. When you're able to take action despite what your yetzer hara, your evil inclination, that monkey mind, that voice in your head tries to convince you out of, when you're able to take freedom in the opposite direction of that negative voice in your head, that is the definition of emotional freedom. This is what it means to bridge the gap between your head and your heart. Real freedom means that you are constantly carrying simcha, happiness, in your heart, regardless of what might be going on around you. So if you're, let's say, trying to sell your house and coming across complications, or you've got bills to pay, or your children won't do what you say, or you're overwhelmed by Pesach prep and cleanup. Now, I'm not saying that these aren't real problems that need to be dealt with, but the moment you give permission for these situations to rob you of your happiness, you have chosen to give up your freedom to circumstance. That's deep. But let's go even deeper. Let me just check the comments. Any comments? Okay. All right, so I'll get a little vulnerable for a second, okay? When I was a little girl, around 8 years old, what I'm doing now here is I before I go into like my vulnerable story, right? I want us to understand, this is where we're headed, right? I want us to understand where our limitations come from to begin with. Because if we don't understand our own history, then we're bound to make the same mistakes again and again and again. Okay, so when I was around 8 years old, Travis, a popular boy who was sitting on the other side of the classroom, I noticed him pointing in my direction, and he started mouthing some words. I saw his lips moving, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. And at first, I thought that Travis was trying to get my attention and invite me over to play with him and his friends. But once I was able to lip read what he was actually saying, I realized that what he was doing is he was actually pointing at the name brand on my sweater and laughing. See, his group of friends, their parents, only shopped in expensive designer stores for their kids. And my shirt happened to be from Kmart. And at the time, 8 years old, that wasn't so cool. So he was pointing at my sweater and he was laughing, and then he got his friends to join in and laugh along with him. And once I realized what they were doing, I felt humiliated. I felt embarrassed. I felt shame. I wanted to go hide under a rock. But on top of that, I made a subconscious promise to myself that I would never dress that way again. And what's worse, I told myself unconsciously, I'm 8 years old, right? I wasn't a therapist yet, right? I told myself unconsciously that there was something wrong with me. Even though I didn't do anything wrong, simply because of what they thought of me. So I also signed a subconscious contract that said Ayelet will do everything in her power to prevent herself from being humiliated ever again. In other words, the contract was titled, quote, "From this point forward, Ayelet is going to feel a lack of self-worth and as a result will overcompensate by acting really cool and capable." So the mere fact that I was the object of shame and humiliation amongst the popular kids was enough to send my sense of security and self-worth into a downward spiral. Is everyone with me so far? Because we're going to go a little bit deeper. So far, so good? Okay. So what I want you to understand is that this child is not just me. This child was me, but this child is all of us, right? Whether we experienced trauma with a capital T or a lowercase t, we all have our own sweater story, right? And what do we do when we become humiliated as children? We send the shamed, uncomfortable emotion into a basement called exile, right? And we send it there never to see the light of day again. This is our current Mitzrayim. And why do we do this? Because it's too painful to risk ever experiencing that shame again. It was just too painful. So for those of us who like when I source psychology, we'll take it into internal family systems therapy for about 2 minutes here, okay? So bear with me. According to internal family systems, we create what's called managers. All of us do this. We create what's called managers in our minds. And managers take on a protective role. Like, you know, that voice that said, Ayelet will never be humiliated ever again. That was my manager speaking. And her job was to protect me from never going through that experience ever again. So your internal managers influence the way you interact with the external world. They protect you from harm and prevent painful or traumatic experiences from flooding your conscious awareness. And when these uncomfortable, exiled, shameful emotions break out and demand your attention, which often happens when we feel triggered, just because we put them in exile doesn't mean that these uncomfortable emotions disappear into outer space, right? They're still inside us, and for many of us, we repress them, and we don't pay attention to them. And when they try to come out, when we get triggered by something outside of us, right, those managers become firefighters. And their job is to divert attention away from the exiled hurt, from the shame, which can often lead to impulsive or inappropriate behaviors like overeating or drug abuse or violence. It can, or sex addiction. These managers can also distract us from pain by causing us to excessively focus our attention on more subtle activities, such as overworking or over-medicating. Okay, so I think you get the picture. And I know I just said a lot, so let's break this down into like simpler bits and pieces before we connect this idea to Pesach, okay? My traumatic sweater experience caused me to experience shame, okay? I was embarrassed, and embarrassment is painful. And I was so embarrassed that I made sure I would do everything I possibly could to never experience anything like that again. So I threw shame into an imaginary basement called Exile, and I vowed to only appear to the external world as cool, worthy, capable, confident. Whenever I'd experience another situation that triggered my feelings of low self-worth, my manager would come out in all her glory and show up as the girl who's got it all together. Right? But that's really hard work. to try to show up as perfect all the time? And remember, this manager would do whatever it took to ensure that this exiled emotion of shame would never see the light of day. So even the managers are working really hard. And these exiled emotions, they carry heavy burdens, which are painful emotions or negative beliefs that they've taken on as a result of past hurtful experiences, often in childhood. So our job as adults is to learn how to unburden these exiled emotions, right? That's how we enter mental and emotional slavery, is by bringing all of these feelings, because these feelings are still a part of you. Just because they're in exile doesn't mean that they've disappeared. So the moment we can now take the things we love about each other, about ourselves first, right? The moment we can take the things we love about ourselves and the things that we don't really like about ourselves and have compassion towards all of it, right? That's when we become whole. That's when we become complete, so to speak. But so long as we live in slavery, we will always remain in Egypt. So you're probably all asking this, okay, I get it. This all sounds interesting, but how does one free themselves from mental slavery? So if you have a pen and paper, I'm going to ask that you write down this quote and remember it for the rest of your life. Okay? The quote is, "The stories you tell yourself about yourself become your reality." I'll say that again. The stories you tell yourself about yourself become your reality. When I was 8 years old, I told myself a story that there was something wrong with me because I didn't wear the right clothes. Then a few months later, after that sweater experience, the first boy that I ever had a crush on looked me in the eyes and he said, "Ayelet, I don't like you. Not even a little bit. Get that through your thick head." 8 years old, me. What do you think happened? Right? Not only did I grab my best friend and run to the bathroom and I cried and I cried and I cried, but what do you think the stories I told myself about myself in that moment were? I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty. I'm not lovable. Boys can't be trusted. So first it was the sweater experience. Then it was the Tommy experience. And the Tommy experience just reaffirmed my sweater experience. Got it so far? We're all good? So I lived with that story for years and years and years until I became old enough to realize that the stories I was telling myself were complete lies. They weren't based on any foundation of truth. What is the connection between wearing a sweater from Kmart and there being something wrong with me? Nothing. Absolutely zero. Zilch. No connection. See where I'm going with this? When you came into this world as a newborn, right? A baby. You see how your kids are, right? Like they come into this world and they see the world as a playground of possibility. You say no, they say yes to everything, especially the things you say no to. Right? For children, nothing is impossible. They are resilient. When we were kids, all we had to do was use our imagination, and we were able to create kingdoms and cities and fairy tales and characters and tea parties that came to life, right? So we need to understand here the premise that when you were born, you came into this world as pure light, as pure possibility, as pure potential, right? Anything you wanted to manifest, anything you wanted to accomplish, you were able to do. And no one could tell you otherwise, right? We know the most common popular costume for little girls on Purim, right, is a princess costume, right? Why? Because for that little girl, the moment she puts on that costume, she actually believes she's a princess with all of her heart. right? Or boys, they dress as superheroes. They actually believe they're superheroes, which reminds me of a story. Once, years ago, I was at the beach and I saw a family on their beach blanket. And they had a son who must have been 4 years old. And what he did was he had a Superman towel. So he tied it around his neck so that it draped down his back like a Superman cape. And he was running circles, running laps around his parents' beach blanket with his arms in the air, yelling at the top of his lungs, "I'm Superman, I'm Superman." And I remember watching this spectacle and just feeling so in awe at how much this boy believed in himself. But then I also felt a little bit hurt because I knew and I know that part of the human experience is that this boy was going to grow up and maybe his teacher would call him stupid, or maybe even with good intentions, maybe a parent would tell him, I don't have time for you right now, and he interprets it as I'm not loved, right? That's part of our tikkun, is to go through life to become more self-conscious, to become more self-aware, so that we can shift from these negative limiting self-beliefs to a world where everything is possible again, right? So chances are when you got a little bit older, you experienced your own dose of self-doubt. Your first experience that broke the vision that you had of the world, right? I came into this world experiencing it as a world of potential and possibility until it became scary and not so safe and overwhelming and stressful. So we must first understand what the most powerful tool is that human beings use that is unique to human beings. And that tool is, hold on, cliffhanger, 1 second. So that tool, the most powerful tool that human beings have, is the ability to speak. It's speech. In fact, Judaism teaches us that speech is the connecting link between the physical and spiritual worlds. Our speech can literally transform the world. So much so that thoughts and speech become things. That's manifestation, which is what I teach. Right? I'm sure you've heard the words abracadabra. Okay, well, did you know that abracadabra, it's in the language of Aramaic, Old Hebrew? And did you know that abracadabra is translated to I create as I speak? Right? How did Hashem create the cosmos? Through 10 utterances, right? Through speech. And we first see abracadabra in Bereshit, in the 5 books of Moses, where we learn about the creation of the world. And the idea that speech creates worlds applies both for Hashem and also for us as miniature creators, as microcosms of this macro energy, right? If we all have a particle of God inside us, it means that we are made in the image of God, which means that we have those similar gifts to be co-creators. Okay, so the idea that speech can create worlds applies for both good and for bad. Meaning, if you speak words of positivity, I love myself, Hashem loves me, I'm okay, I'm safe, right? I deserve abundance. If I speak words of positivity, I will manifest positive outcomes. However, if one speaks words of negativity, then what will naturally manifest is negative outcomes. So why is it that speech is so powerful? Why? Why were we given this tool? The most powerful tool. Because it's the tool we've been given to form our beliefs, create our beliefs about ourselves, about others, about the world. And it's also the tool that we've been given to be able to unlearn in order to create new beliefs. So far, so good? Thumbs up? Okay. Now, the ability to speak derives from the spirit of Hashem himself and is therefore it's a spiritual force, right? Animals, they have vocal cords, but they can't speak. They only make sounds, noises. The ability to use our vocal cords to form speech is solely a human trait because it requires a spiritually energizing force called the soul, the neshama. And it's through the power of speech, like I said, that our beliefs get formed. Okay, so I want you to understand that because we are all made in Tselem Elohim, because we are all made in the image of God, it means that He made us for the purpose of co-creating. And if Hashem is all love and all possibility and all light and all things good and glorious, then that must mean that you too are all things good and all things light and all things glorious. Right? The one thing getting in the way is you believing that that's true. Right? So I said the words that came out of Tommy's mouth when I was 8, right? Ayelet, I don't like you, turned into my belief that I'm limited in some way. And that belief kept me in Mitzrayim, in exile, in slavery for years. Okay, and what ended up happening is as I became a teenager and I was in my early 20s and I was dating, right? I created walls, I created blockages that I wouldn't let people in, not just guys, but even friends, right? I wouldn't let people in. Don't get too close because I don't want my hurt parts to be seen. It's too vulnerable. But our job is to unburden that belief and take it out of exile, to free the shame from her imprisonment, to feel the limiting beliefs from slavery. So let's take it one step further. Now, it's one thing to feel limited, like you're still in Mitzrayim in some way. But it's another level to know that your limiting beliefs actually manifest into your reality. See, the more I told myself that I'm not worthy of love, the more I manifested men who were not good or healthy for me. But the moment I made a conscious decision, and it's really in that, it's in the power of choice, it's really that easy. I mean, it's not easy, but it's easy, right? As a therapist, right? Like it's easy, but it's not easy, but it's in your power of choice to make a conscious decision to choose thoughts of worthiness, to choose thoughts of possibility. The moment I made that conscious decision to decide I am worthy of love, I met my husband that within literally a month of making that conscious decision. Okay, so understand your mind is like a flower garden and you are the farmer, you are the planter, right? The mind, the garden doesn't care what kind of plants you're planting, whether it's, or what kind of seeds you're planting, whether it's seeds of positivity or seeds of negativity. Whatever you choose to plant, that's what's going to grow, that's what's going to manifest. Right? So leaving Mitzrayim, going from a place of slavery and going through this like constricted consciousness into a place of expanded consciousness, right? Into a place of freedom is ultimately the avoda of holding space and becoming aware of, first and foremost, what we still have enslaved inside of us. Okay, so in order to tap into the possibility of what can be available to you as an adult today, living from your highest self, you must first and foremost relearn some of the beliefs that you borrowed from those around you, right? If someone told me I was stupid when I was a child, that's a borrowed belief. Maybe I adopted it, maybe I held on to it for many years, but because I realize now that it's borrowed, I now have the freedom to give that belief, that idea back to where it came from. And why is this important? Because we said the stories you tell yourself about yourself become your reality. And because most of your limiting beliefs simply are not true. If you actually were to go into the wiring of the neural pathways, the beliefs that have become formed, and you were to actually break it down to understand where these beliefs come from, you'd realize that a lot of our identity has been built on a false premise. And from that place of understanding, of having that deep level of self-awareness, now we enter into a world of possibility. We now have access. We can erase the chalkboard of the past and rewrite our future from that place. Okay, so foundational rule of manifesting ease and grace, not only during Pesach, but specifically Pesach, because that's what we're here to talk about today, but in general, is to understand that if you think negatively, that's what will manifest. But if you think positively, that's what will manifest, right? I believe it was the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe who coined the term Seid gut, tracht gut, which is in Yiddish, and it translates into, if you think good, it will be good, right? I'm not making this stuff up, right? This is deep, it's Eastern wisdom, it's Kabbalistic wisdom. Now, okay, maybe some of you are like, this all sounds really great, Ayelet, and it's resonating is true, but it's not always so easy to just think positively, right? The mind has been conditioned to do the opposite for so many years. In fact, a fun statistic that I like to share is that on average, a person tends to think up to 80,000 thoughts per day. Now, if we break that down, that's 48 thoughts per minute, which is almost one thought per second. That's a lot of thinking going on. And if that's not mind-blowing enough, let's take it one step further. Of the 80,000 thoughts we think per day, 80% tend to be negative. And 95% are repetitive thoughts, which means that if I have a negative thought of, I really want to be a public speaker, but I just can't. Then 95% of I just can't, right, is 80% of negative thinking is whatever. You hear what I'm saying? I'm getting into like numbers, and numbers is not my thing. But 80% of our thoughts are negative. 95% are on repeat. There's a reason why I talk and I don't do math. So, okay. So now that we know that the power of speech, we know about the power of speech and its ability to turn thoughts into reality, we can understand why positive psychology is so big in reciting positive affirmations, right? In fact, this idea precedes modern psychology and is actually brought down by our Jewish sages who teach us that when we actually enunciate words out loud, we bring them to life. Like actually, we bring these words to life. So the simplest place to start to rewire your brain for positive thinking is to actually recite affirmations out loud. So instead of claiming, I'm not worthy of God's love, and no matter how much or how little effort I put into Passover prep, it's just never enough because I'm not enough, right? Instead of that, let's erase it, because we've now realized that that belief is structured on a very rocky, false foundation. So instead, I would recite affirmations like, I am worthy of love right now. This very minute, love finds me. And because I am worthy, I know God values every little effort that I make. And of course that's the case because I'm the daughter of the king. So how could it be any other way, Mamash? So in order to break this vicious cycle, we must recognize the voices of criticism and self-sabotage that try to convince us that we're not enough. Okay? And most of all, in order to begin to change your reality, to change the way you feel about leading into this amazing opportunity that Pesach gives us to access freedom, you must have faith that Hashem can undo, and I mean undo, any circumstance in your life. Any struggle, any obstacle, any pain, be it emotional or physical or a real life scenario, the moment you believe, and this is the Baal Shem Tov, the moment you believe that the words you utter, the prayers you utter are being heard, if you believe it instantly, then Hashem flips the script. When I look at the word impossible, right? Because this is all about stepping into possibility consciousness. Everything is possible, right? And I get to choose from a place of power how I want to perceive myself going into Pesach and what I want to manifest during the cosmic energy that Pesach affords us. So when I look at the word impossible, right? If you can visualize, imagine the word impossible, you can choose to see it one of two ways. You can either see the word impossible written out, or you can choose to see it broken up as I'm possible. Meaning I am a living, breathing possibility, period. Once you've accepted this foundational rule that anything is possible, you can relearn, you can undo and change any circumstance, right? The moment you do that, you've opened a magical door to a whole new world of miracles, of emotional freedom, of manifestation. You change your story, you change your life. Now, is it easy to leave Egypt? Is it easy to leave slavery? Is it easy to leave behind the identity that you've held onto for so many years? If it was so easy, then we wouldn't have had to be in the desert for 40 years upon leaving Egypt. I didn't say it was easy. Well, I did say it was easy because it is, but it's not. That's the paradox. But do you know what exists on the other side of the desert? Do you know what exists on the other side of doing that hard work? Freedom, redemption, love. Okay. I'm looking at the time, and I did make a promise that I would keep to time integrity. So there is a tapping exercise that I would love to do with everyone. So, we could do the tapping exercise in less than 5 minutes, probably. So is that okay? Should we do tapping and then questions?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Let's do that.
Okay, amazing. So, you know what? I'm not even going to go. If anyone wants to understand what tapping is, then you can Google EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. We're going to be tapping on certain points on the body in order to clear certain negative emotions or limiting beliefs that we might have. So let me just walk you through what the tapping points are before I actually guide you through the process so that we're not confused when we're in it. Okay, so the first tapping point is the side of the hand. It's called the karate chop point. So can everyone tap with me so that I see that everyone has it right? Very good. This is the karate chop point. Okay, the next point is above the eyebrow. It's where the inside of the eyebrow begins. So try to get as close to the hair as possible. And it doesn't matter whether you do the right side or the left side. If you want to do both, you can do both. Okay, but it really doesn't matter. So the inside of the eyebrow, very good. The next point is the outside of the eye. Good. Under the eye, on the bone. Awesome. Okay, under the nose. Chin. The collarbone point. Good. Right under the armpit. And finally, we have the top of the head. Okay, beautiful. So let's jump in. Quick exercise to end feeling really good and feeling really joyful going into Pesach. So let's start.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please.
Does it matter like how much pressure you exert when you tap, or like how many fingers you use?
No, as long as you're feeling it. As long as you're feeling it. Uh-huh. Give it some pressure. Don't go super light. Give it a good amount of pressure so you really do feel it. Okay. Okay. So taking full responsibility for your own well-being. Begin by tapping the karate chop point, and you're gonna repeat after me. So I want you to say these words out loud along with me as I move through the points on my body. Okay. So I'm giving myself permission to feel good. And I choose to love and accept myself. I'm giving myself permission to feel good. And I choose to love and honor myself. I'm giving myself permission to feel good, no matter what. Even if it doesn't fit my old belief system about when I'm allowed to feel good. I'm giving myself permission to feel good. And I choose to deeply and completely love and accept myself. Good. Eyebrow point. I'm giving myself permission to feel good. Side of the eye. I'm giving myself permission to feel good. Under the eye. I have a right to feel whatever I want to feel. Under the nose. I could be sad or angry right now. Chin. And I'm sure I can find reasons for that. Collarbone. And I might also find reasons for being happy. Under the armpit. Reasons to give me permission to feel good. Top of the head. And I choose to be unapologetically happy. Top of the eyebrow. No matter what's going on. Side of the eye. I'm giving myself permission to feel good. Under the eye. I might even give myself permission to feel awesome. Under the nose. Because I have the right to feel awesome. Chin. And I'm rewriting my own rules. Collarbone. I get to feel good when I choose to feel good. And it might even benefit everyone around me. Me feeling good will make others feel good. So I'm giving myself permission to feel good. Deep breath in. And deep breath out. And just notice how you feel.
Thank you.
Besimcha. My pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Guys, if anyone has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or you can write your questions in the chat if you prefer. And Ayelet, is here to help you and to answer your questions. Also, we have some prizes for, we have a prize drawing that we'll do after this session for everyone who attended either of today's sessions. So if you'd like to be entered for that, just put your name and email address in the chat so that we can make sure to include you in that. And the winner will be announced in the email that goes out a little bit later with the recordings. And yeah, questions.
I have a question.
What's your name?
Yeah, Connor.
Sorry, I wasn't on. I'm like building a bookshelf, but this is great. I love the tapping exercise, but at the same time, found myself asking, like, why can't I accept it if I feel upset as opposed to like needing to feel good? Like, is part of, I guess for me, like, is something that's like allowing myself to feel whatever's happening just as good, or is that not okay? I guess that was like my question. What about like accepting all emotion?
Okay, so you're saying, why was I accepting not feeling good more than accepting feeling good? Is that what I'm hearing you ask?
Accepting. I'm not sure. Can you do that again? Sorry.
You
That's a
said
total
during the
rephrase.
tapping exercise, you were more did you connect more to the not feeling good or than you did to the feeling good? Is that what I heard you ask?
So I didn't actually do it because my hands are busy right now. Like I'm at work, I have to be doing that. But I guess like the words that you used to me sounded like you're not accepting whatever negative emotions are present, but you are only accepting the feeling of good. So for me, that was just a question.
Okay.
Like, is that an approach to take?
Great
Was
question.
that on purpose?
So great question. So in EFT, emotional freedom technique, which is what we just did, generally, if I were to take you through a full round, which could be around an hour's worth of actual tapping, I would take you first through, even though I'm feeling stress and anxiety right now, I fully and deeply love and accept myself. Even though I don't know how I'm possibly going to get all this work done before Pesach and deal with my kids and deal with my husband and cook meals and turn the kitchen over, I fully and deeply love and accept myself. So if we did a full proper round of it, I would have taken you first to bringing all the emotions up, and then we would have shifted into the just fully feeling good, accepting myself. So I'm glad you did tap into that.
Okay.
With tapping, like I wanted to leave you guys on a high, so I'm not going to take you through like a whole therapy
It was
session.
good. It was good. It's just for me, it's something that I work on a lot, like being aware of, conscious of, accepting of whatever's coming up.
Totally. Totally.
Okay,
Spot on. And like you're very perceptive for even realizing that there was something missing, so to speak. Any other questions?
Golda wrote in the chat, been sick with chills and uncontrollable shaking. Somehow that tapping helped. Baruch Hashem, thank you so much.
Baruch Hashem. Amazing. Thank God.
And Ayelet, I think you also had a 3-part Learn to Manifest series that you were gifting to everybody who popped on and everyone who's part of this series. So I'll put that link in the chat right now and we'll include it in the email. Any other questions, guys? You don't have to be shy. You can also contact Ayelet afterwards. Great. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for being a part of this. We love having you here, and spread the word. You can still, your friends can still watch the recordings if they weren't able to make it live. And we just love, oh, great. How can you speak fluently with no fear? Ayelet, you want to say that?
How can I speak fluently with no fear? I mean, I live according to the mantra of feel the fear and do it anyways. So even though sometimes it might appear that I'm expressing myself from a place of like 100% confidence, like thank God I'm at a place when it comes to public speaking that I feel pretty confident. I don't feel so much fear, but it doesn't mean that I don't ever experience fear. But I've chosen to understand that fear is an acronym for false evidence appearing real, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I see that most of my fear is just, it's like false evidence appearing real. It's not, it's meaning I give space to the fear, I feel it, but I do it anyways because I know the only way to tackle fear, which really can create some self-sabotage and lack of taking action. So the only way to tackle that is to take a step in the direction of one's fear.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody again, and definitely be in touch with us if anything else comes up for you. And we have one more comment. Thank you so much. You explained our limiting beliefs beautifully. So thank you, Ayelet. That was for you.
Thank you so much. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Sent you an email now.